I was pretty broken after the first day. So
Yeah. Well, it's good
yeah,
it's good you're here at the infirmary then.
yeah.
Yeah, that's maybe that'll be our cold open. But well,
Okay.
Annick, welcome to the infirmary.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, we are stoked to have you. We're going to talk about a few different things today, and maybe it ends up as one massive episode, maybe it ends up as two smaller episodes. But I thought the take it seriously, hold it lightly. I thought that grew nicely out of your history as a athlete and as a cyclist and a coach. So I thought we could probably start there. And my first question to you is, how did you get here today? Please describe the path that has led you to sitting in this seat.
Aside from walking from my bedroom to my dining room.
I mean, you could maybe that's the end of the story. Is like,
Right. Rather hobbling. Yeah, so great question. I started working with you as an athlete, gosh, over 10 years ago now, after I had done my first couple triathlons and had qualified for nationals on my first Olympic try. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? I don't know. 2 years prior, I embraced sobriety and made a bunch of life changes, and focusing on my health was one of them. And finding sport and endurance sport was a part of that package. Yeah, and I did triathlon for a couple years and progressed to nationals a couple times and worlds, and then picked up bike racing along the way because we were on a really cool team together, and
Mhm.
got into road racing and cyclocross, and that just took me in all sorts of different directions and paths. And then the pandemic came along, and I moved out to the Gorge from Portland, changed my work life
Mhm.
significantly. I quit my job with the federal government. The pandemic kind of forced me to reconsider where I was in my life and sport in particular and what role it had. Started thinking about like what happens after racing,
Mhm.
and picked up some other side hobby activities in the way of coaching mountain biking with with some local folks. And all at the same time, yeah, I started a new like career pathway with as a consultant. And yeah, I the pandemic sort of waned, and
Mhm.
I was like, I still want to play bikes and I still want to race, and I was curious about gravel racing, so I've gotten into that. And all along the way in the most recent history, I realized I was not enamored with my career path, but I
Mhm.
really loved coaching. And so I was coaching mountain bike skills, and I thought I want to do more of this. And I would also like to coach athletes in their athletic pursuits for endurance sport. And so I closed my consulting company and closed a chapter of my life that was 21 years long, working in the energy industry, and started working as a endurance coach with Campfire, and expanded my mountain bike coaching so I could do it more as much as I wanted
Mhm.
actually. And then I've since started gravel coaching too, and yeah, it's a whole new world now. So yeah, and my evolution too, and all that time has really taken its own path as well,
Mhm.
like from a mindset and who I am and
Mhm.
how I am on the bike and off the bike.
Let's to get to that point, can you tell me about some like early challenges in both like training, racing, and mindset that you had as an athlete? And maybe we can work from there into like how you now express that change to the athletes that you coach. But yeah, what were some early like problem points for you as an athlete?
Oh gosh. I think for me, I loved the challenge of trying to balance training in three disciplines
Hmm.
with my work schedule. I had a pretty intense work life, and trying to figure out how to get the pool in and a run in and a bike ride in, and making that Tetris work.
Hmm.
I loved. I was a project manager, and I was like, oh, how can I make all this puzzle work? But there came a point where I became more fixated on that, and like trying to, and the training got more intense too
Hmm.
as I progressed, and And I was like, okay, how do I find a road that's going to give me the right kind of slope for this kind of intervals? And how can I make all this fit with maybe having a social life and something else in going on instead of being singularly focused on being an employee and an athlete robot.
Mhm.
And that became a challenge for
Yeah.
sure. And it became really hard where because I was still new to racing in this space, and I still had some maybe like addictive behaviors present in my minds and my body. I felt really bad about myself if I
Mhm.
didn't do the workout to a T,
Mhm.
and I didn't quite understand how it's probably going to be okay one day of
Uh-huh.
not executing exactly correctly or exactly to the prescribed goal of the workout or exact like description of the workout is going to
Mhm.
be okay.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to check it off my list and move on to the next thing.
Do you
Yeah.
remember, like, was it, you and I can both talk about rock bottoms. Was there like a rock bottom for you as an athlete with that mindset of the like trying to do everything, trying to do it perfectly, trying to fit it all in? Do you remember a time where you were just like, the way that I'm doing this is not working for me?
Yeah, I mean, it could happen a couple times, I'd say, over that period. Like, I didn't quite learn my lesson the first go around, but I remember crying after blind date at the dairy cyclocross
Mhm.
races because I those were evening races, a weekday in the fall, and I'd probably been racing a bunch of road earlier in the year, and I usually would come into cyclocross really excited about hanging with friends and like the super fun party atmosphere, but I was taking it so
Mhm.
seriously. And I was like, oh, I had all these expectations of myself, and work had kind of ramped up even more at that point. And I just was like an emotional wreck, and I
Mhm.
didn't have the emotional energy or capacity to absorb like a mechanical, like a flat
Mhm.
tire in a race. And I just was devastated
Yeah.
and really beat myself up over it. And like, what am I? It took a little time to get the perspective that I needed to realize, like, okay, maybe this isn't the right
Mhm.
way to look at things. I certainly didn't have that perspective immediately, but those types of situations where I'm like, why am I crying? Why am I like,
this
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 is a
is
race?
supposed to be this is supposed to be fun.
Exactly, exactly. Or like needing to like walk away from the group after it was
Mhm.
often in cyclocross. Like that was a period where things, I think, as the intensities of the races are so high and like the race are so short, and you spend your whole week prepping for it and cleaning up after the last one, that like there's a lot riding on those 45
Yeah.
minutes, or there can be a lot
Mhm.
riding on those 45 minutes. And if something went sideways, which it often does, because that's just how it goes,
It's
you're on
just racing.
a slippy surface and
Yeah.
with a whole bunch of people having a slippy time. Yeah, things are going to go sideways, but I couldn't quite navigate it very
Mhm.
well. And that's when I realized I might have a challenge here that I need to explore.
And then tell me about, the journey up. And for everybody listening, I do want to, we didn't really touch on this, but Annick has done these things at a really high level. I mean, you came into the sport as an amateur triathlete, but pretty quickly we were like, oh, you are an elite cyclist, within like 2 or 3 years. And you have raced internationally at stage races. Like you have been the Obra champion in the road race at the 1-2 level. Like, so we're talking about an athlete who is functioning at a very high level, which is not to say that your advice is, I think it makes it count like doubly, because I think a
Mhm.
lot of people have this view that high level athletes are sort of robotic. But I think that one of the reasons that we were like, oh, we should talk to you about this is that you are a high level athlete who has sort of learned to kind of throttle that perfectionism a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a recovering perfectionist for sure. And through coaching, it initially came through coaching mountain biking, where I really dug into the phrase progress, not perfection.
Mhm.
And the more I said it to others, the more like I repeated in my own brain, like, that is so smart.
Yeah.
That is what it is. Even the smallest step is progress, and that's something to celebrate. And it helped me really kind of come to terms with some of the things that I used to do and used to hold and used to
Mhm.
fixate on, and then began to give myself a little bit more space in my own mind for what I can accomplish. Yeah, yeah.
And how have you changed as an athlete? Like since that sort of like crying after blind date, like until now, like what are the things that you feel like have changed in your world as an athlete?
Let's see. I've realized that like more structured training is not better for me. You know, if I can handle
Mhm.
maybe 2 days a week, but I love riding my bike and I just want to ride my bike and not have this like, oh, I need to figure out where to do this, that, and the other thing, or oh, I can't ride my bike with these friends because I've got
Mhm.
intervals. That said, I have been told that it's by Becca, my colleague that I mountain bike coach with, that it's my superpower that I can say, sorry guys, I can't meet up with you on a Tuesday. I've got
Mhm.
intervals to do. And she doesn't necessarily have that capacity. So it's interesting to hear that I still have this
Mhm.
ability to focus, but I know it's just 2 days a week and then the rest is like
Yeah.
play and I get to go do whatever. And so I think that helps me. And then when I'm actually training, if I'm not feeling well or if the weather's crappy, which it can be at certain
Mhm.
times of the year, I will go by the intent of the workout as opposed to the specific prescriptions of the
Mhm.
workout and go by feel. And if that means that like I don't match the targets, the targets or whatever, I don't beat myself up.
Yeah.
It's the best I could do on the day. And I think that I've shifted from want to be the best at what I do to I want to do the best I can in that moment.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that shift in mind, for me at least, was it's like a huge weight off my back of pressure that I put on myself. Because if I wasn't the best on the day, then I mean, I would just fall apart. But
Yeah.
now I'm going to do the best I can. That's all I can do. And that looks different every day, from week to week, year to year. I am instead curious about what that best looks like.
Nice. And what has that done to your sort of like satisfaction in training and racing and how has your performance changed?
I'd say I love going out and riding my bike still, so that
Yeah.
hasn't changed. But training days, like I look forward to them.
Yeah.
I things that I've dreaded in the past, like I'm not necessarily a VO2 max junkie. I'm like a sweet spot gal. And
Mhm.
so when those things creep up on my training plan, I used to really get panicked because I wasn't sure I could do them.
Mhm.
And there's still maybe like a twinge of it there for me, but it's not like this, oh, I can't do that today, or
Mhm.
like I have to switch everything around, or even power tests. Like I used to get pretty panicked about
Mhm.
them, you may recall.
Uh-huh. Yeah, totally.
Because it was like this performance anxiety that would creep in. And now I'm like, well, it is what it is. Let's just do it. And so that's given me a lot more relief, I think, and just like, oh,
Mhm.
it's just another day on the bike. Let's go. And then with racing, I might still have my moments, but I think I've also had like some health issues that have persisted with gut challenges.
Mhm.
And you just I can't control that stuff as much
Totally.
as I want to. And I think like having more anxiety, it contributes to it negatively. So
Mhm.
like I've just got to meet myself where I'm at. And I think that too is like a lesson learned from coaching others,
Yeah.
meeting people where they're at. And I, we say a lot when I'm coaching skills, like you assess where you're at, red light, yellow light, green light on a feature that's coming up, and where you are on that moment doesn't define you. It is just a reflection of you listening to where your body is in that
Mhm.
moment. And I say this to others, and I've heard it then in my own mind as I'm saying it, and like, oh yes, I needed that too.
Right. Totally.
Because it's something I've adopted for my own self in my racing more recently.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about this like take it seriously, hold it lightly thing that we've
Yeah.
been like kind of kicking around as a possible like slogan or motto or and I think it really fits for what Campfire does. But what does it mean to you? Like
Mm,
how does that phrase sort of operate in your life?
that's a good question. I think for me, take it seriously, hold it lightly, indicates that like I can care about something. And I
Mhm.
can even allow some like little butterflies before a race. But if something goes a little bit sideways or weird during a race, it's not the end of the world.
Mhm.
And that's the hold it lightly part. It's like, well, that's just part of it. Like that, ooh, that's a new opportunity for a different reaction or like
Mhm.
to explore what to do in that moment. And instead of like, oh God, that's the end of the world. So for me, it's a freedom and a focus at the same time. A focus on preparing as much as I can, like the things you can control, preparation, attitude, effort.
Mhm.
I'm gonna focus on those things as much as possible, but I'm also gonna like allow for other things into my life and then let the results come as they are
Mhm.
and not and yeah, like just be curious about it, I think,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that I really hope that like that is the way. I mean, the reason we're talking about this is I think your journey from holding things perhaps a little too tightly to holding them a lot less tightly, I've really seen a sort of like more joy in your
Hmm.
training and racing, more satisfaction, and performance has stayed the same.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
you've continued to do cool, amazing, and impressive stuff at a high level while getting happier in the sport, which is why I think like that's a big reason why we're talking, is because like I think you're sort of the avatar for having done that effectively.
Ah, that's awesome. I'm now envisioning myself as a comic cartoony face, but
We can Photoshop that. We could do that in
awesome.
post.
I do often say, folks, I am a human cartoon or Muppet. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely I've continued to find more and more joy in what I'm
Mhm.
doing racing wise. And part of it's also exploring new avenues racing wise, and whether that be like, yeah, gravel or, doing some 12-hour relay mountain
Mhm.
biking or some other thing like that. There's all sorts of interesting ways we can use our bodies, and it's exciting to have a little freedom in that
Mhm.
these days, where I'm instead of being so singularly focused on must do blah to accomplish this
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you're like, I mean, I think that model we've gotten to of like two structured workouts a week, sometimes not even, sometimes just one. Like sometimes
Mhm.
like one structured workout, a strong couple of lifts, and then the rest of the program is really like just go ride. Like we really just try to keep feeding both that aerobic engine of yours and that like mindset of joy of like I just love riding my bike, which I think is like, which I would, if you don't love riding your bike, folks, maybe pick up bowling.
Yeah. Yeah, or try to figure out ways. I mean, maybe there's opportunities there to make adjustments
Mhm.
for discovering that joy. I think too, like when we first started working together, I wanted all intensity. Like I really needed a coach to help
Yeah.
me find a couple gears
Mhm.
other than full tilt, because I was kind of like an on or off person in my personality in my life
Mhm.
as my addictive behaviors in the past. I want to do it all. And so you really helped me understand that there is a, a space for recovery rides. There is a space for a lower level effort. I mean, I remember even like back then, I would do some yoga, but it had to be core power hot yoga. And I had no space in my brain to understand that there was a space for restorative yoga or like a sound bath with an hour-long shavasana. Like that not even possible. And now I'm like, bring it on. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, those hour-long shavasana sessions, that's my kind of yoga.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and like so, yeah, just to see the arc of how you've helped me and
Mhm.
understand even more about myself and what I need and what I can benefit from, I think has been really great.